Hi, I'm James with Georgeson. I'm here with Dave Georgeson, the Director of Development for the Everquest franchise. And you just debuted, tremendous debut. I really loved it. I love the direction that the game is going in, but I admittedly didn't play EverQuest or EverQuest 2. I was 9 years old when the first one came out, as we were just discussing. So I'm going to ask you some very conventional questions to start, and then we're going to, just rip up the convention like the EQ Next just did, and we'll talk about all the cool new stuff you were doing. So can you talk a little bit about the playable classes and the playable races that you've announced so far, and just setting the mood for the world as well?
Sure. Well, I mean, we only announced a few of the races that we'll eventually get to. There's lots of races in EverQuest and EverQuest 2, and we're not announcing which ones are going to be there and which ones aren't. But we're really serious about this whole lore reboot. So, like we showed the ogre and the Karen and the elves and the dark elves and the dwarves and the humans. And as far as classes go, we've let everybody know that there's going to be a lot of classes in the game because of the multi-classing and everything. So you go out there and you collect all these different classes, and those all have different abilities and stuff. But you can expect a lot of the ordinary ones that you would normally see in a game, like warrior and wizard and rogue, things like that. And then there's a lot of specialty classes beyond that. And you can imagine that a lot of the classes that you've seen in EQ and EQ2 will also be incorporated.
Awesome, that's great. All right, so enough with the conventional MMO. It's time for the new age of MMOs. And I guess the place to start is probably with the voxels, because I think that was one of the most unique things. So can you tell us a little bit about how the world was created and destructibility?
Sure. So we had done all this idea about making the world change all the time instead of being static. And so that was where we talked about permanent change and all other stuff and rolling out the rallying calls and stuff. And we liked that where that was going. But then Jeff Butler came in, the creative director for the game. He came in and he started talking about what we had, and it was good, but it didn't feel different when you were playing it from moment to moment. And he said, why don't we do something insane? and so we started pursuing the idea of being able to make everything destroyable anywhere at any time. And that required that we build it out of voxels. It required that we build it out of little pieces that we could blow up and be able to have all that destruction happen. And so Steve Klug, the technical director, pulled his hair out for a while, and after he stopped throwing things at us, we finally settled down into this kind of well, I mean, of course, there's games like Minecraft and stuff out there that do block building. And so we looked at ideas like that for inspiration. And we took a lot of ideas of what we could do from games like that, Terraria, things like that. And when we started putting it together, the ideas of how we could put that into a persistent world, we finally developed this tech that allows us to build everything in the world out of voxels. And that not only allows us to destroy stuff, but it allows us to create stuff on the fly too. In fact, our artists had to completely learn how to rebuild worlds. They can't just use Maya and stuff like they're used to. They have to use these specialty tools. So we had to develop these tools that were really cool and easy to understand. And then that just kept building and building and building. And we started showing off to each other and spending weekends and nights playing the game. And finally we just said, okay, the players have to have this. And that's where Landmark came from.
Well, that's great. And when you dig into the ground, it's not just more dirt. Can you tell us a little bit about the multi-layering system of the terrain?
Yeah, that's what we call tiers of content. There's all kinds of tiers in the world, and that has a lot to do with the lore. We knew that we had all this background, like thousands and thousands of years of archaeological lore. And we wanted to be able to show that to the players. We wanted players to be able to experience it. So we said, well, why not do it like archaeology? Why not just have it, all this different content from all these different epochs of time, be it all these different layers in the world. And since it kind of all like snowballed together. Once we were able to build stuff out of voxels, that meant we could easily destroy and construct stuff. And by being able to procedurally generate all that content underneath the world, now players can explore through that world by magical phasing or digging a hole or however they get to it, but they can find all these lost cities and ancient temples and all this other stuff, and then we can have earthquakes and demolish different areas and respawn it, and the procedural content can constantly be new for players. So as they explore through this underworld, they can keep coming up against new things.
How much of the world would you say is procedurally generated?
Initially, when we generate the world, we usually do a large procedural process. In fact, all the worlds in Landmark are procedurally generated. So we can create some really phenomenal looking things. But then the design team and the art team starts going through what we create for EverQuest Next and handcrafting really cool little things all over the place, what we call POIs, which are these epic moments of grandeur as you come through an area. POI stands for point of interest, yeah. But as people go through the world, they see all these things, and a lot of that is crafted by the artists and the dev team.
Great. All right, so we've set the scene. It's epic. Now let's populate it with characters. Can you tell me a little bit about the thing that I think blew everybody away was the orcs and how, the AI is emergent and what that means?
Yeah, the example that I showed in the presentation is just one layer of it. I mean, it affects combat, it affects social inside cities, the quest opportunities that are there. All of it is. Well, I'm not the right guy to describe it. Like there's some panels and stuff later on, but our everything in the world has different sets of criteria of what they like and dislike. That's the simplest way to do it. There's all kinds of different things that they track, and they're watching the world around them for the situations that they like and dislike, and then they're moving through that world and reacting to it in ways that are understandable if you know what they like and dislike. So, like for example, the orcs. That example, orcs don't like getting their butt kicked, but they do like to be safe and maraud people that walk up and down a road. They're not going to hang out near cities or guards or any of that other stuff. And the way that we make that work in our game is instead of static spawn camps, we tag everything in the world for what it is. And then as we release monsters into the world, like we spawn a bunch of orcs and we say, okay, go find a home, they start wandering around the world until they find a spot that is attractive to them. And then they set up camp and they start doing their thing against adventurers when they walk by until it becomes a place that they don't like anymore because of guards or the players kick their butts too much or the players stop coming by so they can't get any gold. One of the things that I like to say is that if you don't find our content, don't worry, it'll find you.
That's excellent. All right. So moving kind of back towards the convention, can we talk about some of the backbone of an RPG MMO is the dungeons and the raid and the cooperative PvE content. I mean, this whole procedural thing, I cannot wait to explore. It's my favorite thing to do in MMOs, but I also like doing some raids with my buddies. So can you tell us about what EverQuest Next is bringing to the table in that regard?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Okay, well, one of the things that I didn't really touch on in the presentation, but it's important to this conversation, is that we don't have levels. Okay, so this is not a vertical advancement system where you're just unlocking tech tree of abilities and stuff. What we do instead is we have horizontal progression. So as you go out in the world and you find more and more classes, what you're really doing is you're unlocking the ability to do more and more cool things. If you want to attack, say, if you want to go fight a dragon or attack Crushbone where there's like hundreds and hundreds of orcs, you're probably not going to do that by yourself because you're not going to ever become like the 100th level warrior that can take on the whole world by himself. Instead, what's going to happen is that the challenges and stuff that are out there are kind of scaled to the number of players. So if you want to go attack that dragon, you need to bring some friends. And that's where the raid-ish kind of content comes in, because you're going to basically come in, let's say you and I go into a fight and we get our butts kicked. We can either go back to our buddies or we can start looking at our class options and the different character abilities that we have and be able to mix and match what we have so that we can go back in there and face those challenges together in a different way. And if we decide after a while that two people just can't handle it, then we start going to look for other people.
Excellent. All right. The final question I have for you is about the thing that's coming out this winter, which I think blew everybody away. Nobody was expecting. We're like, well, what? So Everquest Next Landmark is a very interesting system, and it's a very interesting idea, and I really love it. I love the transparency, the development. So we can touch on that here a little bit. But tell me about Everquest Next Landmark and just what that is and how you guys are going to use it to make an awesome MMO.
Well, I like to call it EverQuest Landmark the gateway to EverQuest Next, because ultimately that's what it started out being. Was we wanted to be able to give the tools that we were using to build EverQuest Next to our players so that they could help us build it. But the idea just kept snowballing. And we kept going, well, wouldn't it be cool if this? And wouldn't it be cool if that? And what we finally settled in on was the idea to create all these persistent worlds that are procedurally generated, so they're all different. And then we're just going to hand all of our tools, all of our concept art, all of our materials to the players and let them go nuts and just build whatever they want to. And then on that special continent that we have on every landmark world where we enforce the art direction for Norath, we'll run all these different contests and stuff so that we can say like, well, if we're building Firot, for example, and we want some really cool ancient ruins, temples and stuff like that, we want a Mad God's temple. So we tell the players what we're looking for is something that has like an observatory in it and a laboratory where they're experimenting on things, and then we just like kind of let them loose, and then they compete against each other and build things, and then the players are thumbs up and thumbs downing on it, and we kind of look at everything that gets thumbs up, and we skim off the coolest things, and then we offer those people the opportunity ready to put it into EverQuest Next so that it's there on day one. So they're literally helping us build EverQuest Next. Now they might not know how we're going to use that asset because we don't want to we don't want to reveal all the secrets. But once that Mad God's Temple is done, then we can take it and build something really cool with it in the game. And then as you see that content in the game, you know, hey, I built that, and everybody else knows you built it because there's going to be some equivalent of a plaque on it that lets everybody else know who kind of set it up.
Awesome. I got to say, I'm looking forward to that just as much as I'm looking forward to EverQuest Next. Dave Georgeson, thank you very much for joining us here on Curse.
Thanks.
And everybody out there, enjoy the game.